So let's go to drop 1B, or the second part of drop number 1. So that's right here. So mostly that sounded pretty good relative to what we have. I definitely am noticing a couple of things that might just need some adjustments. First thing I'm going to do is just check on the drums. So yeah, so the first, the drums noticed, or let's see, the drums, here we go. Yeah, so I need to move the drums down to our drums drop track. I wish I could just move this thing, but I have to open it up. And I understand the logic behind that, no pun intended. But the reason is these drums right here are the ones that we adjusted to our drop, and now I need to do this for drop number 2. So drop number 2, or really drop 1A, is from here to here. So 49, and it ends at 65. So I'm going to drop everything down here and move it to the tracks. So the first one is the kick. So I'll move it down here. And then I know I made this new crash cymbal track, but that was just because it was alone and not too loud. So those drums sound better, so that's good. And that might actually solve a lot of the other problems that I had. Because we're really pushing all this stuff as loud as we can get it without it sounding bad, if one thing is quieter, that means something else will fill it up. So now, since the drums are at the correct volume, that might solve some of the things that I was worried about. Basically, I think the only thing I was really worried about is some of these squeakier basses sounding a little too harsh. So let's see. I know I turned the harsh frequencies off of one of the EQs, but I don't even know if that's even there here. Yeah, these ones. So I might do the same thing here if that becomes an issue. So let's just listen through now. Okay, so I'm just going back because I can use these same tracks. So that was kind of halfway through. So I'm going to go halfway through. I'm probably still going to adjust some of this, but I just want to deal with this now. All right, so halfway through, everything's down here, so I'll ignore that. But let's see. That sounds fine. All right, these sounded a bit squeaky, so let's take a look. I'm going to solo this. That's definitely squeaky. So let's see, which one's quieter? Yeah, let's move this last one to the -10.6. And context matters here. Oh, whoop, that's the wrong one. That's the drop. That's the first part of the drop. So it was this one I wanted. All right, so there's other squeaky parts. That's also squeaky. Oh. So let's see. It's harder because these are fast, really fast notes. Let's see how that sounds. All right, that doesn't sound as bad. Okay, that's off. Let's see. All right, that's not terrible. All right, that sounds clean. By the way, this after sounds horrendous, sounds abysmal. We'll fix that after. But my methodology here is just get the drops as good as I can for now, and then get everything else good, and then do lots of last minute tidying. All right, so we got that. I might want to boost this a little bit. All right, so I'm feeling pretty good about the second half of part 2 of the first drop. Now let's do this. All right, so this is a tad harsh, nothing too crazy. So I'm gonna take this. So this is those harsh frequencies. So it's boosted to plus 2.9. I'm gonna maybe turn it down to let's try 2.4 and see what that sounds like. All right, yeah, I don't want it all the way off because it sounds a little too dull. All right, the last ones. All right, those are squeaky. So I'm actually going to turn this back up to 2.4, not 2.2. Yeah, let's do 2.5. What the heck? But then these guys is going to get squeaky. So I'm going to make a new track, Command D, to duplicate this with all the same settings. All right, I think this is a problem and this is a problem. So let's turn this all the way off for the squeaky ones and maybe even the volume down a little bit. Let's actually try putting all of these down here. All right, that didn't really solve it, and it's still squeaky. Let's go extreme. Let's go down to like -14, and let's do everything here. All right, that's too quiet. So let's see if I can get, all right, let's try -12.2. So it's not as squeaky, but it's still a little too quiet. So let's go back to negative 11. All right, I want to get a little bit more context here. All right, so I'm going to keep this here. I'm going to duplicate this again. I think these last ones are squeaky, like the squeakiest. Oh yeah, very squeaky. So let's see, is there anything EQ-wise I could do? I'll just keep these ones down. So maybe let's go down to negative 13.4. That sounded good outside of the context, but like I keep saying, context matters. All right, now that sounds too quiet. This is a tricky problem. So this might be an EQ solution. So this is negative 11. So I'll keep this at negative 11, and let's look at the EQ. So I'm going to turn this on, and I'm actually going to go backwards. So let's go into the negatives. Let's try negative 2.5. All right, let's try that. Oh, does this not have a... Oh. Okay, so I got 3 EQs on here. And maybe this is the... Let's see. Okay, I'm just listening to this track. Okay. All right, that takes out some of the harsh high frequencies there. That's what I did. Sorry, I'm not really explaining myself. So I just took that out versus if I didn't do that. And then maybe even a little more. See, the battle I'm having in my brain is I don't want it to be too squeaky, but I don't want to reduce the intensity of the sound either. All right, let's try this. I'll turn this down even more. And then I'm going to turn this volume up because I've reduced so much. All right, it's still squeaky. Mastering. This is literally just crazy. So let's see. Doesn't even sound that much worse. I'm wondering what's going on here. Maybe the lower is the squeaky. Let's try to isolate it. All right, this is crazy, but I've basically made a really steep slant right here. And we're going through the bit crusher, so it's getting super distorted afterwards. So let's see what that sounds like in the mix. I don't hate it, but... Maybe I should allow some of those high frequencies, so like do a low shelf like that. Let's try this. It's crazy. Sometimes one tiny sound like this takes up so much time. All right, I'm gonna turn this up because now I'm listening in the context. This is sounding quieter. Okay, and then let's turn this up too, because I've cut so much out of it. Right, okay, that's sounding a little better. I'm going to turn this up even more. All right, I'm going to listen from here. All right, we're close. Turn this up a little bit, and then I need a little bit more of the high frequencies. So I'm just gonna solo, or not solo this. I'm gonna play it in the context and mess with the EQ here. All right, I'm okay with this right now. It's not turning out as great as I want, but I don't know if spending 10 hours on this is really worth my time. All right, let's see what it would sound like if I did nothing, if it was on the same track as these guys. All right, it's pretty different. All right, here's what I'm gonna do. I just duplicated this track. This is the one that we have spent so much time working on. I'm gonna do this, which is the original, which is super squeaky, and I'm gonna turn this way down. And then I'm going to turn this up a little bit so we can hear it. All right, that sounds good. That's an interesting solution. Let's see if that works. do it without it. Oh, okay. Wow, that's actually sounding okay. Let me see if this would work for that. So that's what this sounds like in the... All right, still a tad squeaky, but I might try this. The same exact technique. So have what we just worked on, and then have these ones. Have this just be super quiet, maybe like down here. Let's see. In context. Too loud. Let's turn this down. All right, that doesn't sound bad. Let's listen to the whole thing. Still a tad squeaky. All right, I'm gonna keep this part out. All right. So as you can see, doing the second part of that, aside from that one annoying sound, took a lot less time just because most of the work has already been done in drop 1A. Now let's go to drop 2 and do the same thing.